Welcome to the Obesity Matters Wellness Workshop, where we embark on an incredible journey towards better health and wellness together. Whether this is your first time or you've been with us since we started, we are so grateful that you're here with us today. My name is Rachel. I am the Vice Chair of Obesity Matters, and I'm also your host for this year-long program.
One of the things I think it's really important to think about meal planning is it's a skill. Meal planning is a skill that is practiced, and with practice, it gets easier. So just like if you ever learned to skate or if you ever learned to cook, you didn't learn to skate by reading about it. You didn't learn to cook necessarily just by reading about it. You had to actually do it and practice it. And with practice, that skill got stronger. When you think about your own plate or your bowl, what food components do you need to add? What are some things that, routinely are there, but maybe what are some things that you might benefit from adding in there? What is the quality of the food that you're routinely eating? We know that sugar, fat, and salt, it helps to elevate the flavor of our tastes. What is the quality of the food that we are adding to your diet? What's the relative proportion of foods on your plate or in your bowl? And how satisfied are you with your meals? So, sometimes we eat a certain way, but we're just feeling like, this meal just really isn't satisfying for me. So the meal planning can actually help with that. So what I want you to take away from this is getting a bit of a reflective point of where do you feel that you are starting from? What foods do you already know how to make? And what are some foods that maybe we want to think about strategically adding in? When people ask, what are we having for dinner? Or when they think that thought, what are we having for dinner? This is probably the most dreaded question of the day. And so if you think about this, are you getting stuck with a blank wall of ideas during your meal planning? We know that stress and fatigue drains our creativity. We know that food limitations and food rules will keep us stuck. And we know that creating meals with what you have, being able to open the fridge door and be able to imagine creating a meal from that's actually a very advanced culinary skill. And so I don't want you to expect that of yourself if you're just actually getting started with meal planning, that meal planning skill and practice. So here's a game-changing tip. I do this myself and I find this is a game changer. When you do your meal planning, keep it visual by adding in meal inspiration prompts. So what I mean by this is have a look at recipe and meal sources for ideas. Your meal source ideas can be your current go-to meals. So we all have a list of the food. We all have a list that probably lives up in our head. The foods that we know how to make that are kind of just part of our repertoire. We know how to prepare these. This might be tacos, fajitas, burgers, chicken, chili. What I think is really helpful is to take this list out of your brain power and put it on a piece of paper, put it on a whiteboard, put it in your phone or your iPad. What do you already know how to make and prepare? Because this becomes your current go-to list. And then from there, we can look at expanding that list with some additional ideas or options. Other sources of meal planning prompts, it's really unlimited, but some sources that we really like are the Canada Food Guide recipes page. They have all kinds of recipes there that are simple, that are tasty. So if you haven't checked out that page, the Canada Food Guide recipes page is a great place to start. Cookspiration is another source that I really like. They also have a Cookspiration digital meal planner. There's many apps, there's many recipe databases that can be helpful. You may have books, magazines, family favorites. You might be a TikToker. You might be somebody that likes to find meal inspiration on TikTok. So whatever your sources are, we want to be strategically incorporating them, making your meal planning visual. So when you try to imagine what are some of the things we want to bring into the home next week, using these meal prompts can help give you the ideas, and it helps to reduce the stress just like that. experiment with to just slide up a little bit, maybe be just a tiny bit healthier. One of the simplest game-changing ways to do that is to double up on the color on your plate. So incorporating more color, meaning more veggies and fruits. And that could be chopping up half an apple and putting that with your supper, or adding in some fresh fruit to a salad that you might have in the summer, or maybe preparing a fresh salsa and serving that with some frozen fish or some chicken that you may or may not have prepared in your air fryer. So adding in some fresh salsa, that can be something, again, it's a cooking technique, it's a method, and once you know how to make it, now you've got more flavor and more color in your meal. Swapping in some whole grains. So whether you use whole grain wraps or buns, or sometimes people find it a bit difficult to make the complete transition to a whole grain and maybe have more of a preference for more of a refined grain. Something that can be just a little bit healthier could be, what would it be like to mix, say, brown rice with some white rice? And so we've got a little bit of the familiar with something that is maybe a little bit more rich in protein and a bit more in fiber. So other whole grains to try can be barley. If you can cook rice, you can cook barley, and there's ways of eating barley beyond just making barley soup. Whole grain couscous or bulgur. Both of those, whole grain couscous and bulgur, very, very fast to prepare and also have that whole grain component. So it's a way of swapping some whole grains. And of course, how can we elevate the flavor of our meals? We can do so with spices, maybe with some fresh herbs, maybe with a fresh salsa, maybe with a chutney, a pesto, a guacamole, a balsamic glaze. We can also elevate the flavor by using different cooking methods. So there are a variety of ways that we can make familiar recipes just a little bit healthier. So there's lots of options, and this is more about what do we add into our meals rather than so much about what are we doing. So we've got the planning, we've got the shopping, we've got the prepping, and we've got the last stage, which is, of course, enjoying all foods. All foods can be included and enjoyed. And what I want you to be thinking about is, what is your foundation? Because we want to look at how can we build that foundational eating pattern first. We can worry about, optimizing it a little further down the road, but I would encourage you to start with your foundational pattern first. And I really want you to think about, how is your current approach with meal planning supporting the vision of wellness that you have for yourself? So only you know the answer to this. And then from this, you have options of how can we expand your meal planning steps to further optimize your wellness vision.
So in summary, what are the main planning steps if you're going to start to approach this concept of planning healthy meals for yourself? The first part is planning. And as Kristyn had said, this is perhaps even the most important step. After you've planned and you have an idea of the kinds of things that you need, then you're going to go shopping and take your list or a picture of your list with you. Then it's about preparing it. Who's preparing it? Do you have someone in the house that can help you? Can you do some preparation in advance? And then finally enjoying the meal that you're about to eat. Because actually, even at the planning stage, I certainly want to plan things that I know I'm going to enjoy eating in the end. As I had talked about a couple of times, there's so many very helpful tips that you shared with us today, Kristyn. Thank you so much for that. And that can really make this whole process a lot easier. For those of us like myself, actually through my work, I find I have a bit of planning fatigue, so I don't really want to plan things. But then there may be others that are, just even the concept of planning's a little difficult to start to wrap your mind around. So a lot of those tips can really help us with this. Meal planning is a skill that we have to practice over and over again. And it actually gets easier as we continue to practice it. And I would say even things like repeating some of the recipes that we know we enjoy. Then it starts to get so much easier to shop for that meal, to prepare that meal. And you're going to enjoy it because obviously it must be something that you like. So the last piece here in terms of a summary is keep your meal planning kind and balanced. I love that part of this. And it kind of goes to the statement that I made earlier, that really having a plan doesn't mean you have to follow it to the T. Sometimes, maybe there's an opportunity to perhaps, be outside of your home and enjoy a meal with someone else. It might be a lovely day and you're going to use your barbecue instead of cooking inside. So you have a plan, and hopefully you are actually partaking in some of that plan, but some of it might shift and that's okay too.